All right, everybody. We are Nerd Initiative, and we are back discussing Miss Marvel Season 1. And now all 6 episodes are streaming on Disney Plus. So we're here to tell you what we liked, what we didn't like, and just give you our overall thoughts on the season. I'm Donovan Rose.
And I am Amira from the Amira Review.
I'm Rabbi Micah, the pop culture rabbi.
I'm Marvelous Jonathan. Go by Jonathan or Johnny.
And I am also Jonathan from the East Coast Avengers podcast.
There we go.
Perfect.
I
So
was
we have
scared this was going to
Jonathan,
cause some
Donovan.
confusion. I was going to say.
No, literally, it's every day I work on the phones, and I'm like, this is Donovan. And they're like, oh, Jonathan. And I'm like, we'll roll with it. So
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
But
Well,
anyways,
if it makes it easier, you can call me JT. So we'll just go with that.
Okay, well,
Okay.
that works.
All right, let's
and
go
I'll
with
stick to
that.
Johnny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
Perfect.
So we'll just go ahead. We'll go around with our initial reviews about the season, what we thought about the show. So initially, right off the bat, this was a completely different vibe from any of the other MCU shows. It felt like, I don't want to say a Disney Channel show because that has like a bad rep, but like I love Disney Channel shows growing up. Like it's what I grew up on. And
Yeah.
it kind of felt like that to me. It was something like
A little bit like those high budget Nickelodeon movies,
yeah, the better reputation. But no, I absolutely loved it. It made me feel like a teenager again. That's how I felt like a teenager. I could finally relate to somebody in the MCU. I couldn't relate to Tony Stark or Natasha Romanoff as much as I loved them. I couldn't relate to them, but this is an actual teenager who is Avenger obsessed, and that's me. That's us. So it was absolutely amazing to actually see this portrayed in the MCU, and I loved absolutely everything about it, and I can't wait to see more of her in the MCU.
He is definitely a Marvel.
Yes, yes.
Donovan, I'll pick up on that. So the first comic book I read with my daughter, she's 12 now. So we started reading Miss Marvel about 7 years ago.
I love that so much.
And I think I wrote about it on the Nerd Initiative, watching the first episode with her. So this is our hero. And I was talking with Tony, Mr. Marvelite, about it the other day. He was live on TikTok. And we were saying that this is the new Peter Parker.
Yes.
That Kamala
100%.
Khan is what Peter Parker was to the 1960s superhero world. I think Kamala Khan is to the 2015.
100%. Every single bit of the way.
And I know some people, and I understood the critique, were another origin story. Marvel has done such a great job not doing origin stories, but I think this was actually one origin story that we needed.
This one really worked too,
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
That this idea that Kamala states in the first episode about being a brown girl.
It's never
And
the
we're
brown
not-
girl from Jersey.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
and-
it is now.
And Johnny, I think, it's the same backlash that people give Shang-Chi
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Eternals.
Mhm.
And she had to go from not believing that she was worthy of being one of those heroes to being worthy. And we needed to see that transition, and the world needed to see it. And I think it was really important. I loved this show on so many levels. And my daughter's away at camp now, so we watched the first 2 episodes together, and she hasn't seen the rest of it. But one of the other things I'll just quickly say that I thought was really cool about the show was talking to her about the partition in 1947 and getting, for both of us, to really get to learn about the history of India and Pakistan, and just to educate more about the terrible fallout from World War II and how it really affected everybody in so many different segments of our society.
No, if I'm being really 100% honest, I did even not know that there was the partition was a thing until this show. And I had to Google, is this real, or is this something that Marvel is just adding for the story? And it's crazy. We didn't learn this kind of stuff in school, and I'm learning more stuff from Marvel than I did in school. So props to Marvel. So wow.
Right.
Yeah.
I cheated a little bit. I have a BA in history, so like I kind of I kind of knew about these sort of thing. But also I personally I see it as my duty to know about any group that was marginalized or that was victim of like a bigger oppressor or things like that, past, present. So for me, the fact that a Marvel show that started literally with Iron Man being held captive in Afghanistan, showing an image of Afghanistan that is not necessarily realistic to this is amazing.
It's insane.
Like mind blowing. I know obviously I have really strong feeling about like Kamala and about Muslim representation and immigration and things like that. It was beautiful for me, but the fact that we had legit an episode about the partition is just incredible.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And was it like, for me at least, like even for someone who isn't of Muslim descent or from Pakistani descent and all that, just even hearing the term Allahu Akbar, hope I said that right, used in a way of celebration and not as this racist way to fear another group was insane. And
No,
it was just like, that's how it should be. And it was just so mind-boggling to me at the same time that like, this is how long it's taken? Like, is this really like the first time that I'm really seeing this in a positive, improper light?
To be honest with you, I didn't think we would ever get to see it. I thought it was, when they said it, I shivered because I was like, whoa, they really did that. They really went with something that just means God is great. That's something that we say when we pray. That's something that we say when we're really happy. And it got turned into that horrible thing. But to see it in like a Disney show that is technically targeted for all Marvel fans, but also for like younger audience to like get them into the MCU, to see it shown in such like a positive light. Listen, I started like, I was like, oh, I have tears and stuff like that. That episode was really emotionally heavy on, like, I mean, a lot of
I love the wedding episode.
That
Right,
was so
yeah.
fun.
That was so good.
Amir was like amazing with like running with the money. He's like, the money. Just but no, it showed, like, for me, it means a lot because especially the last two episodes with the partition. I'm not Pakistani. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware. I am Algerian. I am North African. So, but we dealt with colonization. We dealt with like the French colonization for 137 years. So I kind of connected with her grandma and the whole story between like Sana and Muniba, because when you have parents that deal with colonization or trauma or things like these, like that, there's something that gets lost between them and their children. And it usually takes the grandchild to connect back, right? So for me, it was just amazing. And then the whole thing with like the dialogue between Kamala and Kamran at the end when he was using his power, he's like, oh, they're never going to accept you. You're not normal. We cannot never go back to being normal. And how ruthless the damage control department was. It was a lot, but it needed to be seen. But emotionally, it was a lot.
And I just want to add onto this that, I loved the representation and I think it was super important. Even without that, I thought the show resonated. I mean, I'll just say it, like when Kamala's dad dresses up as the Hulk.
Yes.
And she basically tells him to get lost.
Yeah.
As a dad,
like, this is embarrassing.
As a dad, my heart broke. And then when he's talking to her at the end and he's talking about her name and whatnot, as a father, I resonated with it. And the whole idea of trusting your child to go be a superhero. And that's really what you do as a parent when your child gets to be 16 or 17 is you kind of hope that they're going to be the hero in their social groups and that they're going to make the right choices and do the right things. But
trust that you raise them right in that way, right?
Right.
You have to trust it, and for Kamala's mom to come to that conclusion, like, I know that there are heavy echoes, especially with first generation families, but it also resonated with me, who's a fifth generation.
Me too. Like, no, so it's true. First generation, like, our parents kind of see immigration as like the sacrifice that they had to do for us. Like they left everything that I usually talk about this with my parents. Like, I never think of emigrating because that's such a difficult thing, like leaving that your environment. And the thing is, like,
visas, all of it.
there you go. Like, you see, like, and our parents had, like, good jobs or had, like, situations, and then they come here.
They
and then
had that social status.
There you go. And then they kind of lose everything for the hope that you maybe will get something better.
Mm-hmm.
To see it and to see Muniba saying, like, listen, America was, what did she call it in, like, episode 3? She was like, that was my, like, goal.
Yeah.
You have to find your goal. And I'm like, oh my God, like, it was just chills. It was so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
The grass is not always greener on the other side. That's kind of the whole thing I got with it. But one thing that I absolutely just adored about this show was the family aspect. Like, I think Phase 4 is doing a, like, knock it out of the park job with just having that ties with family and how family is an underlining tone, especially in this series. Because, like, you start off in episode 1 and 2 where it's kind of like this teen who wants to go out and do things, and we've all been there. We've all experienced the rebel side of all of us, and then the parents are like, I don't know. And then just to see, like, the first costume, the little Hulk that her mom gives her, and at the very end she makes her own costume. I was like, that's
perfect.
Yeah, the
Full
full circle is right there. And then, like, like y'all mentioned, the where her dad gives her name. I was waiting for that the entire last episode. I was like, okay, when is she going to be called Miss Marvel? When is she?
Right.
When is that going to happen? And then he said, oh, your name means Marvel.
Wonderful.
And I was like, say it. I was like, do it now. And it was just perfect. I think the series in a whole was it made me feel like I'm not in the outcast of a nerd. Like, when I wrote my introduction for the Nerd Initiative, I kind of said in high school and growing up that if you liked what we are talking about now,
right?
Nah, you can.
It was seen as childish. Like, why are you 13 and still into superheroes?
Exactly.
Got that all the time.
And just to see that she was like me in high school, where it was like, I like this stuff, but I'm not gonna tell everybody else. And then to see her go to an Avenger Con, like a Comic Con, I was like, yes, it's retconned in there. Now the MCU has Comic Cons. We know it's in there. So it was just really cool for me to see that.
No, I agree with you. I love the fact that the message was universal. Yes, it was about representation but at the same time, everybody could connect with that. Like, if you had a difficult relationship with your parents, or you had to negotiate certain things in your life, you can connect with that. If you were just like a teenager who liked Marvel or like mangas or whatever, like, I remember reading, oh my God, when I was reading mangas back when I was like 12, people did not understand, like, oh, well, it's cartoons. Like, why are you reading cartoons? And I'm like, it's not the same thing.
That's what I keep getting.
You see,
well,
like,
the idea too, Amira, with Zoe when she goes to the con. Yes. I think that there was also this idea in high school when we were younger, when I was younger, so many years ago, but when I was younger, where it was like, oh, nobody likes this. But the truth was, like, what was so funny was we all grew up with Star Wars in the 80s.
Yes.
And nobody talked about it. Like, we all watched it, but none of us talked to each other about it. It was like, if you liked Star Wars, you kind of talked about it over here. But the truth is
everyone knows about Star Wars.
Right. And it was just so funny how little it was talked about, yet it was a universal experience for all of us in the 80s. Not one of us didn't see Return of the Jedi or Empire Strikes Back or A New Hope, Star Wars at the time. And that's just, I felt like this show broke down some of those barriers too and tried to normalize nerddom. I'll just really quick, one last thing. When he tells her that her name is the same as Carol Danvers.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I just like, that's when I went, this is all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
I did love that moment of realization. Like, I had the same name as Carol.
Literally,
What?
like, Carol freaking Danvers.
Yeah, she was just kind of like, her eyes got wide and she was like, wait a minute.
Right?
And, like, the light bulb went off in her head and she was like, oh, okay.
Oh,
like,
okay. Now I know what I'm doing.
And what I'm really excited for is that actual meetup.
Yes.
And
Yes,
be like,
yeah.
I want to see her reaction. Oh my
exactly.
gosh.
It's like, so what? I know you're, Captain Marvel. Guess what? I'm Miss Marvel. Like,
Something like that, right? Where like
Yeah.
they ask her like, so what's your code name, kid? And like, Ms. Marvel.
Miss Marvel.
And I can
Yes.
see her getting embarrassed, like, oh my gosh, you were in my bedroom, like
Yeah.
you saw it.
So let me ask a question about that, because there's two ways I read that scene, and I lean towards it being Carol and her
Yeah.
switched places.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
there was another part of me that for a second thought that
She
just like
polymorphed into her,
Yeah,
right?
that's what we
That
thought.
she
That's
morphed
what Johnny,
in.
Tony, and I thought initially, that she polymorphed into her.
but we don't think that's what happened.
No, she was
I don't
No.
think so.
confused when she came in. She was like, whoa.
Like she
whoa.
saw the picture on, like
Yeah.
she put up the
Freaked
pictures,
out.
like, oh,
There's a lot of me in this room. I don't know
yeah,
what's
like this is not where I'm supposed to be. Let's get out.
I mean, for me, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. So I'll just ease it in. When we heard that word,
Oh my
that,
God.
that Bruno said.
Oh yes.
When we heard that, for me, I threw everything that I knew about the comics out the window. I said, it's a brand new character.
Right.
Like, let's just go ahead. And so when that happened, I was like, okay, well, it's not. She didn't morph into her because, again, that's not. We're two separate.
That's not part of
Yeah.
the abilities anymore.
Exactly. So my question went to, okay, is it, again, this is just me thinking 2 steps ahead. Is it Carol messing with the 10 rings, or is it she finds the other like bangle, and whenever they find it, it hits together?
Okay,
Okay, I'll let him go for this one.
I thought you remember, like at the end of Shang-Chi, they said, "Oh, it's sending a signal to something."
Yes.
The something I'm pretty sure is the bracelet. So she managed to find it, and then it connected to something. I that's how I understood it, anyways.
Mhm.
Because I mean, the bracelet could have done the same thing to Shang-Chi, but they did not. It was just sending a
Right.
message. So like, yeah, but yeah.
All I'm saying is that if Simu got pulled in for that post-credit scene, I would have just dropped. No,
Yeah,
but
I was just gonna say that I think we all agree that like the 10 rings and this bangle and the other one are all connected. Like, I think we're all in agreement at that.
100%.
I think they are.
So yeah,
I hope they are.
I think
agree,
it's
yeah.
some type of pre-tech.
Do we think it's maybe linked also to the Eternals, because their technology kind of looked the
They
same?
did look
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, those rings around the Eternals' arms did look like 10 rings as well.
They were, yeah.
Yeah. I'm
Theories.
curious. Yeah, I'm curious to see, like, Phase 4 has been wild, and I know everyone's kind of, people that I've heard are like, okay, when is it gonna
Like when is it gonna start interconnecting and all that?
Exactly. Well, I think we're getting that in a very slow pace because we have the introductions of the TV shows. Like,
Right.
if we didn't have Disney Plus, I mean, we probably would have understood. Well, if we didn't have Disney Plus and a pandemic that we went through for 2 years, I think we'd be, pretty understanding of what's going on right now.
Yeah.
But no, I think having that set up to the Miss Marvel, or to the Marvels, pardon me, was just perfect, because now you know where they're going.
Well, I'll also just say that now the rest of the world understands what we nerds go through when we're reading a comic book and we have to wait 4 weeks for the next issue. So yes, they have to wait a few months for the next.
Or if there's like a freaking 6-month delay in an event.
Yeah.
So like now they're understanding where we're coming from.
Exactly.
I had a question. One of the concerns or critiques going into Miss Marvel was the change in her powers.
Yeah.
And one of the root concerns that just kept coming up was that panel where she turns into Carol.
Yes.
And it was really, from what I heard from creators, that was really important to them, minority creators. That was a very important panel and moment where she realizes, I don't have to look like this.
Mhm.
Having watched the whole show, does that critique still hold? Do you think that they did it justice? How are we feeling about that with the change of powers?
As someone, Amir, I'll let you go for it.
Go ahead. You read the
Well,
comments.
I was just gonna say, like, as someone who is very much like a comic book purist, like the whole mutants thing, still, I don't know how I'm gelling with it properly, if I'm being honest, for example. But as like somewhat of a comic book purist, like I think they did a good reiteration of that one key component of the story where like I don't need to be a white girl from California, whatever, just to be a superhero. I can still be Kamala Khan, brown girl from Jersey, Pakistani Muslim, all that. However, I do think there is that aspect lost because when they created Kamala Khan, they didn't want her powers to look super pretty. They wanted it to be weird, almost uncomfortable in some ways, right? And I do feel like that is slightly lost in this narrative. But at the same time, would we even have time to tackle that aspect of the story, right? So I'm still getting used to her new powers, don't get me wrong. I'm still not completely 100% on them, but I like them more and more as we went through the series, I will say. So,
I have to agree with you because I think it is necessary for her to be able to kind of disconnect her identity and be like, okay, I can be this and be a superhero, right? And it is something that she learned with her powers. I mean, they threw like that sentence of like, it's not the brown girl from Jersey that can be the superhero, but it never came back really. So for me, I would have loved to see a bit more of that. And I know they changed her powers for her to connect to the MCU, the other MCU, to be able to have, with Monica and everything, which I understand. But I wish that they didn't necessarily have to do that for her to connect. I mean, she took the same name, she can still be a superhero, things like that. So I needed them to play with that concept a little bit more, I think. But that's what you get when you have a format of 6 episodes. You cannot necessarily go dive in too deep. Especially, I think it was episode at the end of episode like 5 when Najma like suddenly just knows how to close the veil and stuff. Like you have to turn off like your mind. You're like, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna, even though it bothers me. Like when I don't have explanations, it bothers me. But yeah, I think they just need to give us maybe 12 episode by show. It might be better than 6.
I think 9 would have worked, 9 or 10.
Yeah.
I stand by that. The 9 to 10 episode count might be the perfect in between for these Marvel shows.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no. And yes, mutants, because you talk about mutants, we have to. Personally,
the theme went off.
I mean, when he said mutants, I was like, shut up. I'm like, no way.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'm like, whoa.
Here's my thing though, like mutant abilities are just like a part of your genetics. They're just unlocked. You don't need like some kind of device attached to you to access it. So I'm like, so what are they doing with the mutants now? Is this what they're gonna? Is this the mutants we're getting?
No, I think. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh no, I think what's gonna happen is most likely for her, she's like special. It unlocked because of the bangle. But I hope that they keep the same X-Men and they don't mix like X-Men with Inhumans. That would be weird.
I'm still hoping she's an Inhuman in my heart of hearts.
I don't think so.
Whether she's an Inhuman or a mutant, what is her mutant power?
I guess it's just the
what
are we calling it? Hard light.
That sounds like the Boys superhero name.
Would that have happened?
That's the name of the Starlight dildo.
and Johnny, my question is would that have happened anyway? Right? If she's a mutant, then these are mutant powers. And what was the bangle
really doing, right?
Yeah.
I get it. Like, if she is a mutant and she still gets those abilities, that's fair, that's fine. Just, I like the idea of Kamala Khan being an Inhuman, just because she came out at this pinnacle point where the X-Men were slightly getting phased out and all that. And I grew up in the era where X-Men was just being shoved down my goddamn throat. So I slightly resent the X-Men for that.
I love this so much. Like, I love the X-Men.
I love the X-Men. Don't get me wrong. Fucking love Iceman, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Magic, all of them. I love them. But at the same time, it's just they were so forced on me that, like, having Kamala Khan not be an X-Men was refreshing in that sense, you know? And she very much redefined Inhumans. Like in my opinion, Kamala Khan is the face of the Inhumans in the comics. It's not Black Bolt anymore. It's not Medusa. It's not Lockjaw.
Mhm.
It's Ms. Marvel.
Mhm.
So I feel like to take that away from her, in my mind at least, I know it's not the same for everyone else, is to take away that aspect of her.
Yeah, no.
So, yeah.
I what's it, Marvelite and Superhero Talk had like a theory that actually apparently Marvel maybe wanted Kamala to be an X-Men from the beginning, but because of like right issues, they went with Inhumans.
So was it one of the co-creators actually recently came out and they said that, like, yeah, no, we wanted to make Kamala an X-Men, but there was that whole situation, so we just made her an Inhuman.
It was the I want to say he was a CEO. He tried to
Oh yes, I did a whole video on that fucker.
Yeah. He really wanted to do something else against the X-Men, so he created the Inhumans, which was essentially the same thing, but
he just rebranded the Inhumans, which is a completely different thing from the X-Men.
Exactly, and so
it was.
No, I was gonna say, and so like for the MCU, which is totally different. Again, when you look at the comics and you look at the movies and the shows, like they get their source material from the books, and it's not one run. It's a run from here, a run from here. This adaptation. So it's all blended together. So like, when people were mad about, again, like for example, with Moon Knight, like they were so mad. I mean, I was talking to a buddy of mine. He was so mad that Jake Lockley didn't make his appearance until that final episode.
Oh, that was such a good teaser, though.
And exactly, I loved it, and I was like, I knew, knowing him in the comics, I knew, but again, you have to have that thought. Okay, this is not
the same universe.
Exactly,
it's and loose adaptations.
Thank you. Exactly. Yes, I say that all the time. And
there is the. Oh, sorry, JT. I was just going to say there is also the question about how much does knowing the behind the scenes stuff actually matter? If you know that She-Hulk was created because of copyright issues, does that really matter for the character? Yes, we understand it was 2014. They wanted to use Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver in the Avengers movie. And they wanted to use Quicksilver in the
Days of Future Past. Yeah.
Yeah. So they just said, because Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were also Avengers, there's
the legal backdoor stuff, which, as someone who studies law, I love this stuff, honestly. So there is that.
And I think the question is it's interesting, but is it really useful at a certain point? Because in the comics, she was an Inhuman. And in the TV show, she's an X-Men. And we can understand the why, but the question becomes, how useful is understanding the why in unpacking who these characters are?
Well, do we really think that the main target audience is like, do we feel like Disney and Marvel is putting this content out to reach anybody and everyone that likes this stuff, or is it secretly for the comic book readers? Like, again, to y'all's point, if you weren't a comic book reader and you just like this stuff, you wouldn't have ever known.
Exactly.
You would have never known. So like, Marvel doesn't care about that, but you're going to have that backlash from the comic book readers who was like, nope, you're wrong. Yeah. You're wrong. And so it's like, how do you really kind of devise that? Like, do you just say like, this is our version, which I think that's what they're doing. And they're just like, you're going to like it no matter what. So
pretty much you're going to watch it. You're going to pay for it.
Exactly.
And we'll still reap the profits.
And to be honest, Kevin Feige just hates Inhumans. That's
but he put Black Bolt in Doctor Strange.
I think it was just like to say, okay, well, I'm giving you what you want this one time, but let me be. Like, I have other plans. But I read these two books. It's like the past 10 years of the MCU, as well as like the past Feige and stuff like that. And they literally talk about the MCU, and they say, we want the MCU to be seen as its own universe. Same thing with, that's why I was so bothered when in Multiverse of Madness, they say your universe is 616. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not. It's not 616, because they literally say here, it is not 616. It is not like, it is MCU. So like, I think they will always take inspiration from the comics, because obviously, but other than that, they will always mix stuff and different panels and now we have different origin stories. I was extremely bothered by the whole Jin thing, but now I'm so happy that it's not canon and it was just a mistake. So that's really cool. But yeah, with the X-Men, what I'm curious about is like, how are they going to introduce them? Is it going to be like Wakanda, where they were always there but never there? As you said, Johnny, like, oh yeah, probably like Charles erased everybody's memories. And
Because he's a piece of shit.
but I would love to see it connected to Days of Future Past. Like, you remember when Logan just woke up, right? And he's like, oh, and Charles, a lot of things happened. I'm like, maybe you can work with that. But yeah, I don't know. I would love
For the record, I am one of the few people in the world who really does not like Days of Future Past. I don't know why. I just genuinely don't like that movie. But I try not to put that on others.
Right. No, I think Multiverse of Madness was one big fan fest. Like I think like
It very much was. Yeah.
like obviously you have the multiverse, which if anybody hears the multiverse, their minds go to Sony, Fox, it starts
everything before 2008 Iron Man.
Exactly. And so it's like, oh, we are able to bring these in, and like even shows that did not do well, Inhumans, now you see Black Bolt from that show in this movie, and it's like, okay, now you get your flowers.
Here's your cake, now take it and go.
Exactly. And the same thing goes with the, I'm one of the ones who I don't want to see John Krasinski as Reed Richards.
Same.
I don't think it makes sense if he's going to be in this movie. What, like, if we're going to see him in the MCU version of the Fantastic Four, then why was he in the? Because they're different universes, right?
Right.
Like,
yes,
it doesn't make much sense. So everybody's like, oh, you gotta cast him. You gotta cast him. It's like, no, we really don't.
We don't have to.
We don't have to.
Because they had Andrew, Toby, and
Tom.
And Tom.
Tom. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And I was reading the producers kind of like, yeah, we do that when we want to do that, and we make it the same person. The question was, why was it all the same Scarlet Witch and all the same
Right.
Stephen Strange? And he's like, and the producer's like, because it's Elizabeth Olsen and Benedict Cumberbatch. And I don't want to hire 20 different actors. I don't want to hire 20 actors to play the same role.
For the record, like before Benedict Cumberbatch ever got casted as Doctor Strange, I have been begging for Johnny Depp to have played Doctor Strange.
Wow.
Oh,
I would have died to see that.
But you see, I'm thinking of like Grindelwald in like Fantastic Beasts, and I did not necessarily like his interpretation of Grindelwald, but just because in the books of Harry Potter, he was described in a certain way, like, cool, like smart, whatever. But Johnny gave him his usual aura, and it didn't necessarily work.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. But was it like Doctor Strange in the comics does like a lot of like, he says a lot of weird words, right? And like Johnny Depp can do that.
For sure. Amira, I wanted to go back to what you were saying about the Jinn.
Yes.
And so I don't know if you remember this, in Age of Apocalypse, which, Johnny, is my second least favorite X-Men movie besides Phoenix.
Fair.
But that's another conversation for another time. He calls himself El. He calls himself the Jewish God. It's one of the names that Apocalypse says that he goes by.
I did not realize that. Yeah,
it's a quick line. It's a mention, and there's definitely problems with misreading of the biblical Hebrew, what Christians would call the Old Testament God. And
because from my understanding, the only name that I know is Elohim. I think Elohim.
That's so Elohim. So shorten that El.
Oh, okay.
So, and it's mainly in Genesis, but calls himself El.
Yes.
And, there's, and then in Love and Thunder, they mention Jesus in Omnipotent City, or they reference.
Yeah.
Jesus in Omnipotent City.
Oh, yeah, they do.
The carpenter, yeah.
The carpenter God. I don't know how this all sits with me. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby definitely have their mythology that they created and their universe, and they incorporated a lot of of our myths into the Marvel universe. And yeah, so I'm just kind of curious how you felt about the jinn being incorporated, why it bothered you, what you think now.
Well, okay, so I actually was planning to make a video because I went twice to watch Thor. I really loved it. I find it extremely funny. I love what it's doing for the character and things like that. But that part also like made me feel like a bit meh. It's just because I understand the story. I understand what Gore needed to do, but it's so far from what I would have done personally as someone obviously of faith. So I was like, oh, okay. But usually I disconnect it. I disconnect other mythology from my personal belief. So I didn't have a problem with Thor, and especially when they said in Thor 2, Dark World, like, oh yeah, we're not gods. And then Loki says, give or take 5,000 years. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's continue. So for me, I never had an issue. One of my favorite books ever is like Percy Jackson. So like, I never a problem. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so excited for the TV shows. Don't get me started. But for me, mythology and things like that, I'm usually not bothered. Now, when it's like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, that's where I'm more careful because it's they're all intertwined and things like that. And obviously, I don't want to speak on behalf of other religions. I'm just going to talk as like a Muslim person. The whole jinn thing, I was not comfortable with it because first of all, it kind of reeked of like Orientalism a little bit. Using the jinn, using like the genie from Aladdin type of thing. I was like, nah. And then also like as Muslims, there are specific, like I'm gonna assume maybe you're a rabbi, really, or
yes, no? I am really a rabbi.
Okay, cool. I'm not sure.
That's good to know. Actually, I've always wondered.
I was like,
it's not just a prop. No, I am an ordained rabbi.
I wanted to make sure, but like there are rules about these sort of things, about like the unseen and things like that. So like we as Muslims believe in those. It's like same thing believing in like angels, whatever. I'm not gonna give you like a class on like Introduction to Islam 101, but like
okay,
one day,
yeah,
please,
I will attend.
Thank you, you're so sweet. But like for her to just literally just live with them, be like, oh yeah, I'm a jinn, I'm the guy they told story about. I'm like, no, as a Muslim person, no way in hell would I have reacted the way you're reacting have I known. And it's not possible, first of all, religiously speaking, it's not possible. So the fact that they took like a concept that is religious and they kind of tried to like MCU it, I was not comfortable. So
it would have been the equivalent of a character revealing that they were an angel outside of Lucifer and Sandman. And
even that, me personally, I don't like these sort of things. First of all, I'm like super scared of like anything and everything. So I never watch anything of it with like demons and what, oh my God, I can't sleep. But no. So like, yeah, if she would say, oh yeah, we are half angels, it wouldn't have bothered me that much if it was not linked to Islam. But because people argued that, yeah, jinns existed in Arab mythology, which they did, it's true, and South Asian mythology, because Islam came in Arabic, like it's the language that they used. So they use the same word, but because she's Muslim and it's linked to her identity, I felt like they were reusing the same old trope of Orientalism of like giving that Muslim character powers from like Aladdin's like lamp or something like that. And I just did not like that. But also the fact that they were playing with like religious belief, I did not feel comfortable with that. So I just like I was serious when I said I did not watch episode 4 and 5. Like I was like, this is, for me, they overstepped, and I would have expected better from a Muslim-led show, right? So like when you have people behind the camera that represent the group that you're showing on the show, I expected more, I expected better, and I did not. But I felt it from episode 1 where they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna turn off the light. Are you scared of the jinn? No one says that. Like no one says that. So I was like, okay, maybe it's a South Asian thing that I'm not aware of, right? Anyways, all of this to say that I was not comfortable. I was not happy with it. I gave it a chance because a lot of my South Asian mutuals and other Muslim friends reached out to me and say, oh, by the way, it's not jinn thing, and the episode about partition is extremely important and you would love it. I decided to watch it, and I'm happy that it's not the case anymore. But yeah, no, I was not comfortable with it.
I will say, with obviously after every episode we talk in, the Discord with all of our other, friends and stuff. And I want to say colleagues, but I don't know if that's the right word, but we all
I'll
talk
say
about
colleagues.
Yeah, colleagues. And we'll talk and stuff. And again, from someone who, again, I don't try to, talk religion. I don't try to talk politics. I've mentioned this in the Discord before. It just, the negative side comes out. However, when you were starting talking about that, it really opened my eyes, and I was like, maybe this is like, how do people feel about this? Because again, for me, I was not aware. And again, for any religion besides Christian, because that's what I grew up with, and even with Christianity, like I'm not like woo, I don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna show it to the world. Exactly. I'm not gonna force it down people's throats. My I guess father-in-law now, he is a pastor at a church, so it's like, but after reading what you were saying and then rewatching it with my wife, I was like, I can see where this could be a problem. Let me understand it more. So first off, I want to say thank you for doing that. And then it made me go back and think about the other like slight little, because I feel like the MCU and Marvel in general, I feel like they don't say it, but they do put sly little like remarks in there, like in Thor 2 when he was like, give us 1,000 years, and I was like, wait a minute, like if you don't hear it once, like it's gonna be lost forever. But now that Thor: Love and Thunder had all the gods, like literally all the gods, and I was like, oh my gosh, when this movie comes out on Disney Plus, someone's going to freeze frame every single part.
I was trying to do that just in theaters.
Just take pictures of your kids.
Literally, I recorded that scene, and I'm not gonna lie, and I was going back and I was trying to look.
The dumpling one was so cute.
Yes, he's so cute. Bow.
I will make one plug for Eric Voss on the new Rockstars.
Yes.
If y'all don't watch that, he does all that work for all of us. And, I'm incredibly thankful for that, because he really does go through every single detail and every single frame, and he does that so if you want to know all those gods, watch his recap.
I will say I did find it, again, with Thor: Love and Thunder. I know this is not a review. I love dumb comedy, like Mighty Python and the Holy Grail is my favorite comedy ever.
I love Tropic Thunder.
Okay, so yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So the little stuff like Korg's god sitting on a throne of scissors because Rock beat scissors. I was like,
yes.
That was
it's those little things.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that was, for me, Omnipotent City was fun. As I said, like I really disconnected. It's more like so when it touches my identity, because I don't want to speak on someone else's behalf. So like if someone tells me today, oh well, I practice Norse mythology and I hate Thor, then sure, let's sit down and talk about it, and I'm willing to listen to that. But obviously I never want to like throw like my belief at people, but I want to be transparent. Like that's what my content is about. Like me as a Muslim might have a different perspective from someone else, so like that's what I try to do. And the whole thing with the jinn, when it came, it kind of hurt, and I was like, oh please just don't do that. Like it felt like a little slap, because it was going so well, but then they did that. But I'm happy that they changed it. And but yeah, no, like the whole Thor: Love and Thunder though, I really did enjoy it. Like the Zeus with like his little skirt, like
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I think you can still do it in a way that it doesn't hurt anybody, and it doesn't necessarily like so yeah.
Well, when we start to look at when people say, and we talked about this, Donovan, right, in our Love and Thunder video, where when people start to say that the MCU Phase 4, it's all over the place, it's this, it's that, like how many connections have we just made between all the shows? And we didn't even bring up Moon Knight and where the Egyptian gods hang out, and the Celestials.
They mentioned Raw.
Yeah.
All of this stuff is still connected. It's like, and clearly it's all about the themes in Phase 4.
Yeah.
You know, the found family.
Yeah.
To me, that's like one of the biggest ones. And
For me, Phase 4 has just very much been like we've now established the MCU. We've had that big moment. Now let's just take a moment. Let's live in it. Let's love it that much
And
more.
thunder
Let's
it.
add more to it.
No,
Right.
I agree, but also like we lost big pillars. I said it yesterday to Michael. We lost like 3 huge Avengers, right? So we're trying to rebuild.
Right.
I think
I
we're
forgot Nat. I'm not gonna lie, I forgot Nat. I was like, Cap, Iron, who else?
Who,
Oh, I forgot Cap. And we have a new Cap. How can I forget about our new Cap?
That's the thing, right? So I think we're expecting Phase 4 to be the mirror of Phase 1, which it's not. Yes, we're getting new heroes, we're building a new team, but I feel like it's gonna be different like spaces all at once. You will have the galactic like Avengers, and then you'll have Earth Avengers. Because to be honest, I don't see Sam Wilson fighting like the Eternals unless like he gets something. I don't
The shield bounces off a celestial. This one.
And then you introduce Eternity,
what was that?
which is like a completely new thing with like the Tribunal, with maybe Galactus coming, like Secret Wars. There's so many like field that we can play with. So I don't know where Kamala Khan is gonna enter into this. Obviously, I think it's gonna be maybe in space, but yeah, I'm excited to see where it takes us.